Yo, what's up, my people? This is Informant 254, guys. Welcome to my channel again on TikTok and on YouTube. Guys, today it's an important day. Guys, today I'm going to talk about a really sensitive topic. One of my subscribers told me to talk about, and I just did a little bit of research about it and listening from everywhere about this thing called black tax, okay? And guys, actually, black tax is something that came from, this word came from South Africa, yeah? South Africa, and it came somehow separated from Ubuntu, you know? Ubuntu is like, I am because of us, you know? And the black tax has the same effect, is like you supporting people who are not able to support themselves and not accounting for it. The question is, the big question mark is not accounting for it, you know? So what's actually black tax? Because that's what I'm talking about today. And this is a big conversation, especially for people who are in diaspora. But mind you, the black tax also affects people who are just in the country. If you're helping anybody in a country and you're not accounting for that money the end of the year or end of the years, that's black tax, you know? And that's why people have brought this word to attention, because people feel, a majority of people in the diaspora feel that if they don't take care of how they help the people back home through this black tax, which is money that's not accounted for, it will affect their future. And it's true. Actually, if you don't plan for your future and you kind of handing out the money, there's a possibility it will affect you and you'll regret in the future. So that's why it's a big conversation that people have discussed, and experts have come out with big time solutions on how to deal with black tax. Jump in, let's talk about this. Okay, guys, let me make myself comfortable so that we talk about black tax. It's a wonderful Wednesday. Winter is almost, it's knocking the doors, but we are still there, feeling a bit of the sun. So guys, what's actually black tax? Yeah, what is black tax, you know? Yeah. People believe that black tax is remitting money to relatives, friends, without planning. In simple words, you know, somebody calls you and says she wants some little money for rent, she can't pay her rent, you send it. School fees, you send it. Some money for funerals, you send it. All that money that's not been accounted for, it's what's called black tax. And that's the main reason why some people feel like the rain start beating you when you feel like the black tax is choking you, you know? So black tax is something that is nice. I can't say it's something that is bad, because somehow you are where you are because somebody supported you, whether it's your mom, your dad, a relative, you know? So it's always good to give back to the society, you know? And that's where black tax comes in. But the only thing that people need to understand in few words is that you have to have a plan, you know? Black tax has to be planned. You know, you don't need to be mean, and you don't need to feel like it's supposed to be a must. No, it's not a must. You just need to plan so that you feel like, okay, this is what I earn, I'm saving this, and this is what I might give in case something comes up. That's how you do the planning about black tax, you know, because some people feel like they should just be selfish. Don't be selfish, you know. The fact that the word came up, the black tax came up, you know, these things have been there for so many centuries. You know, in Africa, you know, in Kenya, there's Harambe, you know, and the fact that black tax comes from Ubuntu, you know, Ubuntu was like a big thing in South Africa. Then from these, the people became financially stable, and they felt like they're being choked financially by the people they're supporting, ended up coming up with the black tax phenomena, you know, or philosophy. Yeah, but still, it's something that we have to live with. It is something that has helped us to be where we are as a continent. You know, I'm just not talking as a Kenyan, I'm talking as a continent, and it's something that has to be improved and worked on so that it works better. Black tax is really important. So my people, the black tax phenomenon or philosophy of supporting your family members who are not so fortunate as who you are or where you are or the businesses you have or the investments you have, it's something that has actually hit the continent, because you can imagine people like support 60% money is sent to Africa, helping the people in terms of black tax, and it's a lot of money. So my people, what are the abuses, the abuse that people claim, especially people in the diaspora claim they're abusing the black tax? First of all, if you are like a consistent sender and the money is not accounted for example, somebody just asks for money, you send, and it's not accounted for every month, you get it, and it is not something that's going into any development. I understand if you're sending money for your parents to support themselves, they retired and everything, that's okay, because it's going to your parents. This money for food, maybe, for electricity, and just normal day-to-day, a normal day-to-day budget. But the abuse of black tax comes in when you are sending money and then your relatives or your family members decide they're not longer going to work. When I talk of work, I don't just mean jobs. I talk of working hard in terms of trying to get yourself into a decent job, trying to get a career. Yeah, that's when black tax is abused. You find that your siblings don't want to go to school because now they are very comfortable. You're sending every month like $1,000, for example, and they are really comfortable in their skin where they are. They don't feel like they need to look for a job, or they don't need to like even try to advance in their studies and become independent. That's when black tax becomes an issue. Because some people even end up saying, okay, I'm going to marry, I know my brother is going to support me, passing this information to your wife. I'm talking of in terms of big time black tax money. Some people send a lot of money as black tax, and it ends up making your family members, your brothers and sisters, saying they can still marry and live with it. Then that's an abuse of black tax. What about if something happens to the person sending the money? They don't see it, and people believe money from abroad is easy money. No, it's not. When you are working for somebody, anything can happen. They can be, you can be, anything can happen. You can lose your job, you can be sick, you can die, you can be retrenched and you need a new job. So the people who depend on the black tax, they have to always know that if you are out there and you depend on your relatives for life, for feeding your children and taking your children to school, you have to understand, try to look for an exit strategy. Try to look for the best way where your money can work for your money. The money they send you can work for you, like an investment, a small job, something that will give you something back. Because the fact that you are receiving money from abroad, and you're so comfortable where you are, doesn't mean that it's going to be like that forever. Things change. That's why I'm saying, when you're receiving black tax, when you receive this money from relatives abroad, know that anything can change. Even the most successful person in your family can end up changing, or something can happen to that person, lose a job, be incompetent to hold a job. So that's why it's important for people who depend on black tax to try their best, and the fastest way to try and see that this money ends up giving back to, giving back, like, gain or something. Look for a business, try to get a skill, as you are being supported, try your best to try and get a small skill, because anytime the money can stop flowing in, and that's when you'll know, oh my God, I wish I used the other money for the last 5 years, 10 years to do something important, get a skill, start a business, to move on with their life. That's why the black tax is abused. When they become so comfortable and they decide, okay, I don't need to work, I don't need to hustle, I don't need to study. My brother is in Germany and he has been supporting me. He'll pay for my rent, he paid for my school, he paid for my medication, and he's also going to pay for my family. Please, people should not hold on to that, because that's not something you can depend on. Things change. Economies change. Look where Greece is. Greece was a top economy in our history, but right now Greece is a bit low. It was a superpower, but look where it is. So things change. That's why I'm saying, please, guys, don't abuse the black tax phenomenon. You'll come to regret. It will leave you in the dark, big time dark. This is Informant 254. I talk about opportunities and life abroad. And today's important topic is black tax. In Kenya, 67% of money is sent to support the people back home in the villages, in their studies, in medication. People abroad, they send that amount. 67% of Kenyans depend on that, on the black tax. And black tax isn't just about people who are in the diaspora. As I insisted, no. Your relative, she's earning 10,000 Kenya shillings. She decides every month you're asking for some help. She can't give you a planned amount. She gives you, from the 10,000, she decides to give you 1,000 shillings, and that 1,000 shillings is unbudgeted for. Next month you ask for the same help, she sends you 800 shillings. The other month she sends you 600 shillings. The other month she sends you 1,200 shillings, depending on the problems you're having. That's why black tax has to be planned. You need to plan as an individual, and you need to plan. The person who's sending the money and the person who's receiving the money, both of you need to plan and have a conversation. And the conversation needs to be not when things are really hot, but the conversation needs to be a good one, so that both of you see the best way you can help each other to improve on your life situations, and also just to move on with your lives. Not that you have to. Don't wait for it to start choking you before you decide to discuss about the black tax. Talking to you guys in diaspora. Check this out. Yo, what's up, guys? As the discussion goes on about black tax, which is a word that came out from Ubuntu. It's the people in South Africa who felt like they studied, got good jobs, and then I can say white collar jobs, in different sectors in South Africa, and then decided to help their relatives who were quite unfortunate not to be able to be where they are. So actually, black tax is a word that came indirectly from Ubuntu, but the problem is it started choking the people. If you're sending money, it's choking you. You're feeling it's not right. Now I can't move. I'm stagnant. I'm stagnant in my finances. I'm stagnant in my development. I'm stagnant in my investments because of black tax. That's when you realize, okay, you start becoming depressed because of black tax. This is something that is really, really common, because the fact that you don't know, you don't plan for it, that's when it starts to affect you. So guys, what's the solution? What's the solution? What's the best way to deal with black tax? The best way to deal with black tax is not being selfish, not closing out your relatives, your family members. The best way to deal with black tax is to plan for it. You have to plan. You understand? Because everybody is somewhere because of somebody. It doesn't matter where you are right now, but everybody is somewhere because of somebody. Somebody sacrificed something for you to be where you are. And it's always important to support others also to improve. So the best solution for you to deal with this problem with black tax is to sit down with your relatives, your mom, your dad, your brothers, discuss on the best way you're going to to improve on their situation. Okay, for example, talking to your brothers to be able to get skills so that they can also be independent. Independence is the whole thing. Being independent so that they can also partly support your parents. You being the champ of the family doesn't help you. You need to be able to bring others up so that they can also support, because if something happens to you, what happens to them? Yeah, you need to improve the skills. Try to encourage your siblings about improving on their skills. Try to get them a job if you can. If somebody said the best, sometimes even if you have investments, the best way is to employ them and be strict with the employment, because employing relatives can really pull you down. You need to be strict so that there are penalties, there's punishment, and there's no coming back in case of anything. You have to make it clear when they are working for you, because, for example, you have a big company and relatives just want you to dish them out money. No. The best way is employ them, let them deal with the PR, let them then deal with the relationship, let them pass through the disciplinary committee of the company without you. So in case there's any problem here, they have to be dismissed like any other worker. That's actually part of dealing with this black tax, employing your relatives and being very strict. And these are the conditions. In this, once you are in the company, I'm not your relative, you're an employee, I'm your employer, I'm your boss, and you don't report to me, you report to somebody else. For example, that's also a good idea, because you can imagine you have employed your sister, so she ends up disrespecting you because she's not doing the right thing, because it's a family business, or because it's your business, it's your investment, but then there's indiscipline in the whole thing. That's why it's important for you to make sure that people who deal with this kind of problem, they are neutral and not you directly. That's one of the reasons, that's one of the solutions of dealing with this black tax thing. Yeah, very, very important. So black tax, guys, are you being exploited or are you just being responsible? You need to know there's a thin line between these two statements, because it depends. If you feel you're being exploited, how? If you feel you hold the responsibility, did you give it to yourself, or did you just decide, or they reached out to you? That's why black tax is something that needs to be really, you need to reconsider yourself and see if you feel like you're being exploited and you feel like this money you're sending is not money that actually these relatives need, then you need to cut it off. You need to reduce it and plan for it. If you feel you're really being exploited, that's the best thing for you to do. But if you feel you're responsible and the money is doing something that is big time changing your community, it still needs to be planned for. Follow up about your money. Try and ask once in a while if it did anything good. If you travel home, look at the situation, weigh the situation, and see, are you just being exploited? Is the money just going to waste, or is the money doing something important to your people? Because sometimes you might be sending money and it's not going to do anything. It's not going to change anybody's life. It's just being used as if it was picked on the road. And that's why you have to draw a line. Are you being exploited, or are you really being responsible? Those are the matters dealing with black tax. Yo, what's up, guys? Drowning in black tax. Big time conversation. Yeah. Big time conversation. The diaspora community can attest to this. There's some people actually who are drowning in black tax. For example, you find that there's somebody who's been living in Europe for the last 30, 40 years, but then he has nothing to show for it. Not at home, not in Europe, no family. Yeah, that's and you realize that person is always in the World Remit Center, in the MoneyGram Center, sending money to the relatives back home. So you find that there's a conversation about this big time thing called black tax because of this. And drowning, not just drowning, can lead to death. In Europe, you find that some people, you realize somebody has been working in Europe for so many years, but he's not happy completely. Not because he's not earning good money, no, because he's trying to solve the problem back home. Ancestral problems, poverty problems, generational poverty. Impossible. At the end of the day, you realize this person ends up even having psychological problems, mental problems. You find somebody talking on the roads, on the streets alone, because he has been sending money to relatives, family members, and denying himself. At the end of the day, he becomes very unhappy. He finds himself in a position where he cannot solve the problem back home. And the fact that he's unhappy where he is leads to a lot of depression. So people need to know that black tax can lead to death, can lead to somebody being suicidal, because you've done all the best, but there's nothing that's happening back home, and you're drowning in depression where you are, with no support, no family, no kids. That's when black tax becomes a disease. Sending money, unplanned money, and at the same time not developing yourself where you are. Remember, life is for the living. Why do people go to work? To make money. Why do people make money? So that they can use it to make themselves live decent lives and be happy. So there's no reason of you as an individual who's living in the diaspora to be depressed because you're every time sending money back home and living a bad life. Always just buying yourself second class things. Never buying yourself anything new, never treating yourself, never going for a holiday, and the fact that you are trying to solve problems. That's when you drown in black tax. Because remember, that money is not accounted for, and it will never be accounted for because you are not having a proper record for it. So if you calculate the amount of money you've been sending for the last 30 years, for example, and put it in a ledger, it's a lot of money. And you can imagine you've retired, you don't have anything in your savings, and you are thinking, okay, you just live with the retirement benefits. Then you see it's not working, and then when you have problems, nobody's going to help you. That's why people say, as you send money to your relatives and as black tax, try to always make sure you also save something for yourself. I'll suggest you put 30% always away. If you're gonna send 100 euros, make sure 30 euros is put in your savings somewhere on top of your normal savings. Because remember, when you're old and you're away from your relatives, from your family, nobody's gonna take care of you financially. Then it's over for you. And now you'd regret why you are not saving and planning on your investments. That's why, please don't drown in black tax. Something very important for guys to know out there. Guys, so dealing with the black tax, you have to prioritize it. It's pivotal, That's when you change. You have to prioritize who's important, who is in this circle that you have to send the money to. You have to have priorities. Otherwise, you just say anybody who calls you, you just send, okay, then next time send that. No, next time send to who, that. No. You have to prioritize who you're sending money to and who is in that circle. That's really, really important about black tax. Another important thing is you have to be able to know how to say no clearly. If you don't say no, because that's a very hard word to say, especially to, for example, your dad or your mom, who expects something from you. And sometimes what people in diaspora feel is that if we say no, they feel like we are intentionally denying them the money to send the money. But that's not the point. Sometimes it's good to just say no because you don't have. If you don't have, just say no. Because every time you say yes, what's the reason of saying yes and sending the money, and you fall into depression? The people back home don't know that you're falling into depression because of black tax. So it's always important to be clear and sometimes just say no, you don't have, and that's it. You don't have, because you also need to eat, you need to drink, your family needs to also eat, drink, live a normal, decent life. You can't deny your family's decent life because you have to please some people. That's why it's important for people to know about black tax and learning how to say no. I know some people are asking themselves, so I've been sending this money, I'm in depression, and I have been, I don't know how to say no. You can't just say no immediately. The best thing is communication, as communication is the key to all this, people not taking you as an enemy and hating you. You have to communicate to your relatives and tell them, you know what, I'm gonna support you for the next 2 months. After the 2 months, I need to fix myself, and that means that I can't send the money anymore. It's important for them to know that you are not okay. If you're not genuinely, if you're not okay, it's important to tell them you are not okay, and they need to give you time to balance your life, balance your finances, and also fix your situation. So communication is still the same thing, the key. Communicate, say this is it. Okay, mom, I can't right now, I can't next month, I can't over next month because this is my job situation, this is my financial situation, and that's why I can't send money. Otherwise, black tax will make you jump in front of the train. I can just imagine how many people have committed suicide because they feel like they've let down their families. They feel like they've not reached their family's expectations, That's why it's important for you to communicate before you reach that level in which you think you're becoming suicidal, because black tax can make you be suicidal. Depression, stress can give you ulcers, it can give you sugar. You can even get a stroke. Remember, in diaspora, people don't have family members around to, physically meet, talk out stuff, They don't. You don't have that emotional, social help. Most of the time it's work, home, alone, home. Depends on how you have, if you have a family. Some don't have family. So it's really important for people to know about this. People back home to know your situation and accept it, and accept you with the situation before it's too late for you. Because remember, there's no need of you living if you are living an unhealthy life. Your depression is a disease. It's a disease. It will need treatment. So it's always important before it reaches that level for you to communicate and say enough is enough. Learn how to say no, and plan for them. You don't need to cut immediately. You need to cut it slowly. Reduce, so that they know this is your situation. This is your current situation. Otherwise, black tax will lead to ulcers and depression. So guys, another way of dealing with this black tax problem or menace, it's not a problem actually, it's a support system that's not planned for, is by, if there's, in case there's any emergency, if there's any problem that has popped out, is by not feeling like you're the one who's supposed to fully finance it. Means contribute a bit of it and let others also contribute. Very important, so that you don't burden your finances. It's always important to accept that you contribute and let others also contribute, because little by little a problem will be solved. Don't be that kind of person who feels like you have always to solve everything as an individual, because and then at the end of the day you'll feel the pinch. Always make sure that you support and let others also support, so that the Harambe spirit, he raised, you raised, they raised, at the end of the day the problem will be solved. Don't be the savior of the community. You'll drown in depression. Topic: black tax. Yeah, black tax. What do we learn about black tax, guys? What lesson do I as an individual learn about black tax? I need to know and plan for my retirement, because as much as people don't think about it, some retirement is really important. We need to start planning. you need to start planning, and everybody who's in a working condition needs to start planning on retirement, so that in case you've retired, you already have an exit strategy where you can have a support system, some kind of money inflow, some kind of income apart from your retirement benefits. Very important. That's what we learn about black tax. Especially we learn this from our parents, from our grandparents and relatives. When you become old, you become vulnerable, you'll need help. And if you have money, enough money saved, you can be able to get the help. That's what we learn today from black tax. Always have a plan for your retirement. Big time stuff. Yeah, something else about empower your family members. Empower your family members to be financially responsible in terms of education. Be serious, be strict, try to advise, try to get the best solution for your family members so that they can also be independent. That one will be a big thing, that in the future they can be independent and they can also help you in terms of other things that come in between their lives or your life, so that you are not the only one who's the big fish. Always try the best to empower your family member, your relatives, your siblings, and even if it's possible, your parents. If your parents can have a good investment that brings in good returns, why not? At all age, they can still have some kind of, they can still be busy and generate some little income for them, just to keep them busy, and also something else that's coming into their accounts as income. So empowering your family members is a big thing, and it's something that will help you deal with black tax. At the end of the day, you'll have less to give out, or you'll have more from others than just you. You'll have little from there, little from there, little from there. That one has a job there, that one has a job there, that one has a job there. All together, you can really, really do a lot and move stuff in terms of poverty. Empowering your family members. We're talking about black tax. Yeah, guys, so we are talking about black tax, and something that comes up most of the time when people talk about black tax is health. Health is a big time. Health is an expensive thing. Being healthy and keeping people healthy is a big expense. So that's why it's important for people to plan on insurance companies, invest in insurance policies and pension policies, so that at our old age, we have that opportunity to enjoy these policies, because we realize that people who actually send a lot of money to help, it's part of it is medical bills, especially medicine and treatment. So if we have good medical policies and insurance policies put in place, we'll have less to deal with when it comes to black tax, because you can imagine you are treating people privately. Very expensive, and it's something that treatment cannot wait. So that's why some people suffocate in black tax, because of treating their loved ones. Very important to consider this, because at the end of the day, if somebody is sick, needs treatment, there's no way you can say, oh, let me wait for next month. No. It's immediately. You need to do that immediately. That's why medical policies, insurance policies play a big key in dealing with black tax. This is Informant 254. Talk about life abroad and opportunities. Stick around. Yo, what's up, my people? So, what does this term black tax and loans and credit have in common? Let me tell you what happens. Sometimes you don't have the money. You are forced to borrow to help. Please, it's always know this is a bad idea. But sometimes, because it's an emergency and there's nobody else who's going to help, people go into loans so that they can hand out the money. That money is black tax, because it will never come back. And that is the type of money that will put you, that's the kind of move that will put you in depression, you know, about black tax. So try as much as possible not to reach that level in which you're going to borrow so that you kind of help, and the money that's not going to come back, you know, money that's not going to come back, it's not accounted for, it's not an investment. Black tax, in some situations, they are not investments. You know, you don't expect to invest in medicine. You're not investing in medicine and treatment. That's nothing's gonna come back. So it's always important before it reaches that level to have plans about that black tax. So if you're a person who supports your people in terms of black tax, and you earn good money, please don't always just blame them, because black tax is voluntarily. You're volunteering to support people. Plan also your enjoyment. Travel, go to hotels, you know, and enjoy yourself. Very, very important in terms of, you know, your own emotional growth and happiness. You know, don't just close yourself out in terms of enjoyment, so that at the end of the day you'll always blame the black tax philosophy for you not being happy. Plan also to have a nice time with your family, a nice time with the relatives you are sending money to sometimes when you're in those villages or in those countries. Enjoy yourself so that you don't blame the black tax for your downfall, for your depression, and for your emotional instability. You're talking about black tax. Big time topic for people in the diaspora. Yo, matters of the heart too, black tax. If you are a cheerful giver, you're supposed to be happy. The only issue comes in if you can't start your own family because of finances, because of black tax. If you are giving out so much that it's affecting you, your current life, on settling, marriage, you know, family life, courtship, all these things need a bit of money. You need to be comfortable to love. Nobody can love somebody if she or he is uncomfortable or unhappy. You get it? And let not black tax be the reason why you are single, you know, and your mileage is like gone. Eh? I'm not saying you're supposed to be zero mileage, no, but if you're an elderly person, you might not realize that it's because of black tax that you are single and you're not married. Yeah. I know people asking how. The thing is, you're working on Saturday, you're working on Sundays, you're working at night, you have a third job for the sake of saving the extended family, the nuclear family. At the end of the day, you are done with your life, you are finished, you are old, you are tired, and not ready to start any kind of family. That's how black tax affects you. So guys, this conversation, you might not know it's affecting you, but it can be affecting you indirectly, you know, because black tax is something that is unrealized loss if you're not planning on it. You have to plan on your black tax. In simple words, plan to give. And if you plan to give, you'll be a cheerful giver. Because you give, and what remains, you have planned for it, you'll be a happier person. So that's how black tax comes in our lives. Not just people in diaspora, even people who live in urban centers, who support their people in the villages. That's how it affects them. Let black tax not be the reason for you not being a happy person. You know what I'm talking about? Yo, so guys, check this out. Huh? Check this out about black tax. Huh? If you can imagine, do yourself a favor, okay? To see how this affects you. Okay? Check the amount you pay for your rent per month. Remove the food expenses, the fuel expenses, okay? And then check the amount of money you remain with at the end of the month, okay? Then multiply that by 5 years, okay? check the amount of money you have, the sum, the total amount of money you have for 5 years, if at all you are saving that money. Okay? Then check what you've done for the last 5 years. If that amount is more than what you've done for the last 5 years in your life, you realize you're not doing anything in your life. Yeah, that's why black tax affects you if you're not planning on how to dish out the black tax. You get it? That's how it is. If you're not planning on how to give out the black tax, that's how it will affect you. Just check how much, because the problem is you don't realize you're doing it. You don't realize you're giving it out, and yet you're not planning on your life. That's why black tax is something that needs to be brought on the table and discussed with the people who are in question. Very important. So at the end of the day, plan your life. You get it? Plan your life so that don't spend on unnecessary things and blame it on black tax. Unnecessary things, I mean, for yourself, unplanned shoppings and stuff. And then at the end of the day, you fall into depression because of you're sending something back to your relatives. No. Make sure that you plan yourself, plan your budget, and in the same thing, plan about that black tax so that it's within your financial spect, within your financial, walls, so that when you give, you don't regret later that you are giving. That's really important, really important about planning. Okay, guys, and for those few words, I want to wish you a lovely Wednesday as the sun sets, as we guys slowly slide and we drift into the cold season. I want to wish you the best in your lives. Be happy. Do the things that you love. This is Informant 254. I talk about life abroad and opportunities. Take care.